Hey railheads, welcome back to my Finger Lakes railway layout. How many mistakes can I make on 5 simple scratch building projects? Stick around and find out. Coming up on my Finger Lakes railway layout. Well, this is part 2 of my rural area where I try my hand at scratch building. I did scenery in part 1. I'll put a link to that right at the end of this one. I think it's safe to say I'm better at scenery than I am at scratch building. But let's take a look and see what went wrong. Working from some drone prototype photos from Jim Cairns, I used some of these in part 1 as well. So this is pretty simple. We've got a Mennonite farm and the 2 towers from an abandoned salt mine. This was a Morton salt mine. I'll put a link in the description to a good article on that if you're interested in that kind of thing. Well, let's start with the towers. Pretty hard to mess them up. For the first tower, I built a core out of MDF and glued it with Titebond. And just to try something different, I used PVC boards on the second one. I used mech to glue this one together. Seems sturdy enough, but I wish I had roughed up the gluing surfaces with some 60 grit sandpaper first. I know a lot of you guys follow Boomer, so you're familiar with some of these golden modeling products. I wanted to get a worn, rough concrete texture on these towers, and I'd never used this stuff before, so I'm practicing here on a piece of scrap. Interesting side note, the Golden Company is located in the tiny town of New Berlin, New York, about 100 miles east of Watkins Glen, the middle of nowhere. Years ago, I attended the Unadilla motocross races there, and they draw the top pros from all over the country. Here's what it looks like before I sanded it. I'm just knocking the high spots off here. I gave them a coat of Tamiya buff. I ended up going over it later with some pan pastels to get the color right. I had fun detailing the tower roofs. They're just below eye level on the layout. Switching gears now for a minute. If you recall in part 1, I said I would make this edge into a ditch line. Needed to add some Sculptamold here first, and this is before I'd heard about Celluclay. While that's drying, let's take a look at the scratch build on the farm. So I have 5 structures total. The 2 towers, the farmhouse, the milk house, and the brown steel barn. My first mistake, I tried to kit bash a Pike Stuff kit basher kit. That plastic is so thick it's almost impossible to cut. I ended up tossing the pieces back into my scrap box. The farmhouse kit bash went slightly better. That was a Walther's kit. But I've decided no more kit bashing for me. It seems easier just to build from scratch using 20 to 60 thou styrene. Well, we've seen the towers, now let's look at the farmhouse. You ever forget you bought a kit and order another one? Well, that's what happened to me with this Walther's Lancaster farmhouse. It turned out to be a good thing, though. I needed to add the little additions to make it look like the prototype. I guess it looks okay from 3 feet away. Oh, just ignore that red barn. That was just a placeholder there. And now on to the metal barn. Well, things are looking okay. I've got a little drawing to go by. Well, what could go wrong? Mistake number 2. Can you believe I cut a couple pieces with the grooves running horizontal instead of vertical? Jeez. The standing seam roof went pretty smooth. It was just slow going. But I didn't mess anything up. I think next time I'll buy a different evergreen product that'll look just like standing seam, but it's preformed so you don't have to glue all those ribs in there. But I wasn't done messing up. I cut out a window in the wrong location. It's not the end of the world. I forgot to add extension pieces to the sides, so the building was only 6 inches long instead of 10. And I forgot to add roof peaks to the ends, but I struggled through it and I got things put together. And then I messed up the ink wash. I was using the airbrush and I forgot to start and stop while off the model, and I got this all splotchy. So I decided to paint this one blue and call it the milk house. You can see the proportions aren't right. It's just going to have to do for now. Well, I took another try at the brown barn and had much better luck. One thing I would do differently next time is use evergreen styrene angle pieces for the corners instead of individual strips. So I'm going to plant what I've got. I cut out some cardboard to cover where the buildings will go. I applied grout for dirt, and then some static grass. Oh, I almost forgot to tell you, in an effort to redeem myself, I decided to scratch build a concrete block chimney for the metal barn. And it's kind of hard to see in the photo, but I thought it would be a cool detail to add. So I ordered a little sheet of this concrete block pattern. I cut it out and glued it in with mech. I used a few different Vallejo paints and just brushed on or dabbed on with a sponge. Well, now let's hop back over to the ditch. The sculpt mold should be dry by now. This is kind of what I'm after. Sorry, I don't know the photographer here, or I would give credit. If anyone knows, just drop me a comment down below. You see how the grass is kind of brown and dead in the ditch, and probably from weed killer application, and then it goes greener up the sides. I want this grass to kind of lay down, so I'm just sort of laying it in there. Hey, if you want to see a nice rail fanning video at this location, check out my buddy My Life's Tracks. These are screenshots from his video. I'll put a link to it here at the end, as well as in the description. But check him out. He's got a neat channel with a mix of upstate New York rail fanning, train shows, and modeling stuff. He's grabbed some photos for me before because he lives up that way. So, hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Well, hey, thanks for watching me struggle. Like and sub if you want to. I'd appreciate it. I'll see you next time on my Finger Lakes Railway Layout.